And we are recording. Albert, welcome to the Honey Badger Diaries.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're in Vietnam, correct?
Yes.
In Saigon?
Yes, I am. In Saigon, yeah.
Yeah, you contacted me on Twitter. We've never met, I think. We don't know each other. Maybe tell me who you are. Before
So my name is Albert. Yeah, sure. Name's Albert. I'm a founder and CEO of kind of Lightning payments platform called Neutronpay. And so we're kind of just like kind of like a Stripe or PayPal or similar to OpenNode. So we're trying to provide, a payment rail for e-commerce and online businesses to have access to accepting Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning. So we're just trying to make it easier for any type of business, or like I mentioned, like e-commerce and stuff like that. So we wanted to get kind of into the esports kind of business as well. And so we came out here out east. Like originally we're from Canada. So our headquarters is in Canada, but we're finding a little bit more market share over out east. And so that's why I'm out here in Saigon. So working with a few partners here. So the people like I tagged you in on Twitter. So Dominic, who runs Bitcoin VN here, which is, I would say probably maybe the second largest exchange here, runs an OTC desk as well here. So we're kind of working on trying to build a little ecosystem here in kind of Vietnam, Saigon, trying to get it going here. Just feel like there's a lot of opportunity here for people to start using Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning. So that's kind of a little bit about my background.
All right, cool. So before the podcast, I read a little bit about Vietnam and what's been going on with the Corona crisis. And I noticed a lot of interesting stuff, actually. So for one, I saw there are no confirmed deaths yet. The other thing is that there are only a couple hundred cases, while there have been over 100,000 tests. Is this correct information as far as you know, or what's been going on?
Yeah, I would say as far as testing, I would say testing is probably right on the dot. They do really extensive testing. They have a lot of procedures here for people coming in and out of the country. They also have local procedures where I mean, like if people are kind of on the streets, in the buildings, anything, any shops, everything is mandatory with masks, obviously hand lotion, everything, right? So the usual stuff.
Well, usual.
For the deaf side of it, I'm not
usual in Asia. Not usual
yeah,
here.
usual in Asia, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So like the masks were pretty prevalent already, right? So people were already wearing them going out, on motorcycles and, people walking, and it's kind of a cultural thing here, right? So they use it if they're sick, you have a cold, they'll wear a mask, right? So they won't infect anyone. So implementing it a little bit more and kind of having more strict rules on it wasn't that kind of far-fetched for everyone to kind of implement. The downside of it was when they enforced people to kind of stay in. That's where it kind of got a little bit more, I guess, stressful for some of the people here. So kind of happen? As of 2 weeks. When did that? Well, so prior to April 1st, there was kind of more of a lenient kind of stance on businesses and kind of large gatherings being opened. So you were able to go to kind of clubs, you're able to go to lounges, kind of restaurants. But now after April 1st, they had a mandatory lockdown for 15 days across Hanoi and Saigon. So all restaurants, pretty much anything with large gatherings, was closed down. So right now there's an effective, if you go outside right now, everything's closed. So there's only these little mom and pop shops that are open, obviously. And so those are more like the small table seats, maybe 2 people at the most. They have other laws that are actually implemented as well. So you get a fine if you're not wearing a mask. You get a fine if they see you with 2 or more people in a group. And then if you go to a restaurant that has a large gathering, the restaurant gets fined and you also get fined for, participating in kind of the group gathering. So all that's kind of put in place, and it's pretty done really well. The sentiment here is people don't mind going into lockdown. And the reason why is because their mindset here is, let's get this over with. Let's move it aside, get it all finished so we can get back to working again. Because the people here, obviously, the poverty line is quite high, right? So everyone just wants to get back to work. So the bigger picture is just stay home, make sure you don't get sick. And as soon as the government says, hey, we have it under control, and that's why these numbers are quite low, they
Well,
feel like
that's
hopefully in the next week they'll allow restaurants and stuff like that to open.
yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing. I also read in the article. It was an article by the South China Morning Post, I think, that these kinds of measures, this lockdown, for example, which you mentioned, was done relatively early in the curve. There are only a couple of hundred confirmed cases, and they're really taking the sort of better safe than sorry kind of approach. Also, completely all travel has been halted. There's no travel into the country. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So they're really trying to suppress the virus and make sure that it doesn't. There's no community spread, and then, like you mentioned, get the economy going, hoping there won't be a second wave, I guess.
Yeah, they're really hoping it because they just announced in the news today that one of the biggest, I guess, shoe manufacturers in kind of all of Southeast Asia, they have a big operation in Hanoi and Saigon. I believe they're called Pew Chang, I think, and they produce obviously big shoes for like Nike, Adidas, all these big shoe manufacturers like Converse and stuff. They've actually just asked them to shut down the factory for a week just to kind of make sure that that doesn't spread further, right? So that factory in general employs 70,000 people here. So they want to say, let's not cause that infection with 70,000 people and just shut it down for a week, and then we'll assess after that week. So they're taking really hard preventive measures here because they really want to open up, hopefully before May 1st is kind of the sentiment here. And schools have been closed down for 3 months. So you can see that there's a lot of kind of, I guess, anxiety to say, hey, let's get this economy started again. We have it a lot of control. The only thing I am kind of skeptical about is kind of the death ratio, because we do like to keep it kind of real is we do live in like in this region. It is kind of a communist dictatorship, so the information is controlled. A lot of the stuff is censored. So if a death were to happen, it's usually through kind of like, I guess you call it like the grapevine. The news will not broadcast it. No one will broadcast it live. Anyone on Facebook that says anything that's kind of contradictory to the actual government will get censored. They've seen already a bunch of cases of this already where people will say certain things about how the corona is being affected, how it's doing certain numbers. These people get shut down within like 2-3 days, and then they'll get fined, and then you won't hear any news from them after again. So looking at kind of like the news reports and stuff, you can tell that they're really treading lightly and kind of being allowed by the government to say, these are the certain things you can say you can do. But that's my only skeptic of it, of the death toll. Everything else, the testing is on point. I mean, Hanoi's even come up with all these little testing kits. They come up with these little stations as well where you can walk through, and it pretty much just does,
Like the phone
I
booth.
guess, kind of like sanitizes you for like 5 minutes. Yeah, exactly, like the phone booth. And they have implemented, I believe, like maybe like 20,000 of them around Hanoi, because they really want to crack this down, right? So in Saigon, we haven't seen it yet, but in Hanoi, apparently they're deploying these massively out across the streets. So you'll see them if you just type in like kind of news articles for like phone booth kind of sanitization in Hanoi. You'll see an actual what it looks like. It's pretty much like a little. It looks like you're walking in through like a car wash. Literally, you walk in, it has these little drapes, like, and then you stand in there for 5 minutes, and then you walk out, and it just kind of desanitizes you. So, I mean, they're taking some pretty good measures here. So that's where I that's what I would believe in for those tests. So.
Yeah. Did Vietnam also have experience with SARS previously? Is that why they have this culture, you think?
Yeah, I think so too. Because they were affected by the SARS when it came from, I think they said it originated from China again, and there was an outbreak. So they've learned a lot of lessons from that outbreak, and I think that was mostly in Hanoi as well. And so they took some of those, I guess, kind of procedures and kind of how they were doing it. So to kind of give you an idea, so SARS did help that, like with this kind of transition to kind of control the pandemic here, was that as soon as the Lunar New Year came around, and then there was kind of rumblings of, there's this virus that's coming out. They kind of put all stops in place right away, and I think that was the same signaling that they got from, what they learned from SARS. So they knew that the Lunar New Year makes travel for this country massive, right? So everyone's traveling, and the worst place to get infected is likely on an airplane. And so they wanted to stop that completely. They couldn't stop the airlines. What they did do is they started doing containments. So as soon as people were quarantined sick, they started moving people into quarantine kind of bunkers and kind of little situation rooms in the beginning. And then they changed that and transitioned that to separate hospitals. And from what I've heard so far, is that they were saying that some of these quarantine hospitals that they're being moved to wasn't as sanitary as people would hope. But I think that's what you get kind of from a third world country, right? You can't expect to have first world stuff in a third world country, right? There's some places that are for it, and then there's some places that aren't. So the reason why we know is because we hear a lot of these complaints from Westerners that come in. There's a lot of travel here, so they have a lot of Europeans, Australians, UK people, everyone from around the world that come in here. And so a lot of people are complaining because of the housing conditions. And so they say they get housed there for, depending on how bad your case is, from anywhere from 5 days to 14 days. Usually 14 days is the minimum. And they say the housing conditions are horrible, right? They complain to their government. They ask them to say, hey, can we get help? These living conditions are horrible. The sink doesn't work. Toilet doesn't work. It stinks in here. But I think it was kind of for the better, right? So the biggest case was a lot of UK people coming here. And that was kind of the big scare, was because, to give you a little bit of background, was there was a person that went to the UK, and she came back from Fashion Week. And this is when Vietnam had the lowest numbers of COVID. She came back to Hanoi with, I think, 5 of her friends. Don't quote me on that. I might have got wrong, but it's on the news. She came back with 5 of her friends, and on that flight, obviously, they wanted to figure out what flight she was on because that quarantined the whole plane. Because when she came back, she was infected, and obviously her 5 friends were infected. So they affected 20 other people, and I guess identified those other people and finally put them in quarantine. So that caused a huge kind of rumbling and stir, because she was allowed back in because she was a little bit, how would you say, I guess she was part of the wealthy crowd, the top 1%. And so they were saying she was getting, special treatment. She was getting certain things where she didn't have to go to quarantine. She went to a different hospital. And so a lot of that stuff kind of flared up a lot of stuff in Vietnam. So a lot of people talked about that for a bit. And then it kind of shifted after, I guess, like I said, a lot of the stuff gets censored and kind of pushed aside. So she kind of got out of the news, and then they kind of just resolved that issue with her and her friends.
Right. I also read you were mentioning these shitty quarantine conditions. I also read something about whole quarantine camps. Is this something that sounds familiar?
Yeah. There was some places where I guess the hospitals, or those quarantine hospitals that they were putting people into, were getting overfilled, and they didn't have enough room for anything. So now they had these other things called, I guess, camps, or kind of really, really bad conditions. Mm-hmm. That was kind of rumblings. I've kind of heard that from friends of other friends, and then kind of people that I met with. But there wasn't any pictures to verify that. Just a lot of kind of small talk about, my friend was in this quarantine place where he was supposed to go to a hospital, but he didn't go. And they went into this, he said, weird bunker warehouse kind of area, and they just gave him a cot, kind of just like those fold-out cots. No washrooms. Everything else was kind of, if you wanted to go to the washroom, you had to go outside. There's no running water, no air conditioning, maybe just a fan. So just really simple necessities for them to kind of get away from the public. Yeah.
Last thing about the quarantines and these kinds of topics, I also saw that they have travel restrictions within the country. So from province to province, you also can't freely travel. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct too. So they locked down a lot of the stuff on local. So all the flights here to any of the other provinces have been locked down. All the bus routes have been locked down as well. So obviously that doesn't stop other people if they really want to go by motorcycle or rent a car. You can still do that. But any public transportation for travel between the provinces, yeah, it's all locked down.
Yeah, you sound fairly positive about this policy. Is that a right interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. To kind of put it in perspective is, I was born in the West, right? I was born in Canada. So you see a lot of how it's a little bit more liberal over there, and a lot of things are kind of the way they think over there and how things are done. But coming over here, you kind of get more of the Eastern Bloc thinking and how they're doing it. Obviously the word communist isn't good because you get, bad things that are associated with it, right? Like, you get censorship, you don't get rights, you're ruled over. But if you put that all aside, I think when you see a lot of the organization, right? A lot of the stuff is, yes, okay, some of the stuff of being, kind of liberal where your freedoms are kind of taken away from you. I think there's a time and a place for that, right? But when there's a pandemic, I think you have to go together and put that aside for a little bit and say, if the government's going to go and execute on a lot of things to say, hey, we want to do this to make sure that we can put everyone, back to normal and into working order, and it's working, I think it's good enough to give it a try, right? As opposed to, like, say, my friends in Canada, where they complain and say, we're not going to get through this because they keep seeing people at the window going to parties, group of 10 people. They really don't really care about it. They just say, hey, yeah, whatever, it's just the flu, right? But the people that have actually got it, so, a friend of a friend here has got it, and he said it was probably one of the worst things that he's ever felt, right? He says it's not a flu, it's you get symptoms of the flu, right? So you get back pain, you get aches, but he says the difference is you get really sharp, like a headache, kind of like a migraine. Your eyes are always kind of really, I guess he goes, your eyes are always in pain. You have a hard time breathing, so that's where the respiratory problems come in. So he was kind of young, right? So he's 28, so he doesn't need anything, but he's saying it does a toll on you. This is why the elder have a hard time recovering from it. So this is why you see those deaths with people that are older than 65 and above, like obviously die or need respiratory help, because that's where it affects you the most. So for them to recover from it, it took about 2 weeks for him to recover from it. He's really scared to get it again because there's no vaccine for it. And it's something that he doesn't want to go through, is from what I was told from the friend, right? Is that it's just something you don't want to get. It doesn't matter if you're young or you're old, you just don't want to get it, because now you don't even know what the ramifications are of this virus, right? So people say there's respiratory problems later in the long term. Still hasn't been proved, but if it's targeting your respiratory system, then you're gonna feel the effects of it maybe 1 or 2 years later, right? So that's kind of the difference that I see, is that the West is kind of more free. I understand that. I just think that there's a certain time and place to have that, especially when you're trying to make sure that kind of a country, or you want to get back to your normal living life, right? You want to make sure that things are kind of back to normal, but you can't do that if you keep fighting other people that are trying to fix the problem for you, right? So
Well,
that's kind of my thoughts on it.
as you mentioned, in Vietnam, SARS has been an issue before, and therefore there's also more of this culture of people that understand why masks are necessary and why social distancing is necessary and all these things. Is it then still even necessary for the government to also, on top of that, go around finding people if it's already a cultural thing? Like, do you think it's both needed? Couldn't the government just advise people to
I
stay
think
home
so.
and that would be enough?
Um, I think it, yes and no. I think the reason why people sometimes, I think people need direction. Um, the general public usually will need someone to kind of hold their hand and tell them what to do. That's kind of like what the government's there for, right? Like, we'll help you with subsidies, we'll help you with whatever it is that you need, we'll help you with. For other people that are a little bit more savvy, yeah, then they don't need the help. I think those are the people that are more kind of independent, understand freedom, understand, hey, if I need to do this, I will figure it out myself. But that's far from what the general public is, right? So I think that's, and just in my opinion, that's more of like the 20% crowd that can understand kind of COVID, take care of themselves, know what to do, know what they need to do in a case of emergency. And then the other 20% is that they need help. Like, they need a reminder to say, you need to go home, or you need to do these things, because if you don't, then you're going to get sick. And some people just fall within that 80% group and kind of make things worse, right? Because they think
No, but
either A, they just don't have enough information. Yeah.
what you're saying now, I totally agree with. My question was more about,
Yeah.
does the government, would advice be enough, or is it necessary that they, punish people fine them, throw them in jail? Like, wouldn't just explaining to people what the problem is in a culture where people understand the problem, wouldn't that and explain why the solution works, wouldn't that be enough, you think?
Yes and no. Here, a lot of people are kind of reluctant to kind of listen to the government. Um, that's just here. I think some people are willing to listen to that. I think there is, they try to make it so that it's more understandable for people here to do that type of kind of following these rules and just say we don't have to do this force. We just have to publicly tell you and say you do it. But I think Vietnam already has seen kind of the effectiveness of where it was before with SARS and where it is now. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the generational gap, right? So when SARS was around, that was a different generation, and now this generation is a little bit, younger. I guess they're a little bit more, like I said, liberal. So they will listen and they won't listen. So that's why I think that force is there a little bit, where those fines and people throwing into jail and stuff like that, because they just don't want to listen.
Yeah, you
That's
already
kind of just my
mentioned.
opinion. That's my opinion.
Sure. You already mentioned that the general sentiment over there is to sort of do what's necessary now, get rid of this virus, suppress it, and then get the economy running again. What is the economic situation looking like in Vietnam?
So far, from what I've seen, I think it's going pretty well. Um, I think people are, taking those. I think what I'd say is like they're taking that sacrifice to say, hey, let's lock up for another week, and then hopefully by mid-April, the government says, yeah, hey, you can open up restaurants again, you can open up gatherings again, as long as you follow, these rules. Obviously, the mask and the hand sanitation. Um, just because a girlfriend of mine has a business, right, and she had to shut down for the last 2 weeks, which is pretty stressful, right? So among with other business owners, the same thing. That's that sentiment is that yes, they'll stay home, but they just want to get back to work and kind of get things rolling again. So that's kind of that's where the sentiment from what I hear a lot, because it's all you hear is people just want to get back to work.
But it sounds like you're not anticipating some sort of economic crash or financial monetary collapse, anything like that of that order.
Not I wouldn't say too much here. And the reason why is because when you look at kind of the population here and who's actually, part of the wealthy side and part of the poverty side, like obviously in Vietnam, there's still a line of poverty that's a lot greater than who's kind of like the middle class, right? Here, there is really no middle class. I wouldn't say no middle class, but it's a very small, right, kind of group. And that's slowly building as we kind of go along. So if there was an economic crash here, I think it'll just follow like any other governments, right? Like, they'll provide aid. And right now they are, providing aid right now. Probably not in the same realm of numbers as the US, but they are saying that, that there's going to be aid that's coming because they know that people can't work. But don't get me wrong. Like, I think like the biggest thing that's being hit right now is the airlines, right? So Vietnam has a big problem too as well, right? They need to continue flights, right? To kind of it's one of their leading GDPs, right? Is to get people in and out, export in and out. That just has to keep running. And when that comes to a halt, or almost to a halt, that really affects the Vietnam economy, right? So there's a lot of things going on here for infrastructure wise, and if that starts to slow down, like Vietnam will be totally crushed by this pandemic, just like any other country, I believe.
How's Bitcoin doing in Vietnam? Is it big? Do people use it? Do people know about it? Is it?
Yeah, the bad thing here is that there's a select group of Bitcoin kind of maximalists that I would say here. So like Dom runs a meetup group, and so we try to meet up with a bunch of Bitcoin just focused people. But the problem is that we're kind of outweighed by people in the crypto space. So I mean, like tokens, like people love the airdrops here, and so they'll come in here and kind of tell them a dream of, hey, if you get these tokens and if you buy them and sell them, we're going to make you 10 grand a month. or 10 grand a week, whatever it is. And, unfortunately, even though 2007 came around, 2008, people still don't learn from this. And it's still happening here. So there's still events, there's still these things that come out where people try to sell tokens and try to sell the dream. And that's kind of slowing down. But you still see it, in the news, in the Telegram group chats. You still see people have these meetups. A couple weeks before, meeting up for tokens and stuff like that. So Bitcoin does have its place here, but I think it's more underground, and the reason why it's more underground is because of the utility it provides. Because just like China, there's capital controls here, so there's a lot of people that are really wealthy and they use Bitcoin for different means, or I mean not different means, but I mean for wealth transfer. So they'll move it out of the country and then move it to countries like Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, right? And so the government allows for buy and trade, but they won't allow for accepting it for any goods or services. So I would say from what I've dealt with and what I've been seeing here, there are people that really are into it and are really hardcore enthusiasts into it. And then some people are just more into the crypto side, which they love the tokens. So
what are you yourself expecting from Bitcoin throughout this, next couple of months, throughout the crisis with the halvening coming?
I think it's, like the other two halvings, I think it's going to be a little bit of a drop. I mean, it's unfortunate because it's going to fall with, kind of like the market crash, right? I think it's just going to follow. So if the market crash follows, I think it's going to follow with it. But I think eventually, long term, like my long term onsite on the Bitcoin is it's going to go higher. I think, and I think after the pandemic, I think it's going to be a little bit more realized. Just because I think when I'm looking at Vietnam is kind of like the early start of where China was when WeChat just got introduced. And so there are people saying that they don't want to deal with cash anymore. They just want to deal with a mechanism that's a little bit faster, a little bit quicker. And there's a couple companies that try to start something like WeChat here, right, which is called Momo. So Momo is like a wallet that's kind of similar to WeChat that had somewhat of a taking. But I think after this whole kind of COVID thing is over and the printing of money and the money's coming in from the government, the Vietnamese dong is already quite low. So adding more money to it, just increasing inflation, is just going to make people look at it and say, well, why would I even hold this money when I don't even want to hold it in the first place, right? So a lot of people here love to kind of exchange for US dollars. Like if they have abundance of Vietnamese dong here, they have a big business here, you'll see a lot of the big businesses just change it and exchange it into US dollars. So I think it's a good timing for Bitcoin to kind of come in and say, instead of US dollars, you could just put into Bitcoin, right? It's easily to, you can carry, it's not confiscated by anyone, as opposed to like US dollars where you just kind of, their mindset is still like paper. You're just kind of hoarding the US dollars of cash into your mattress. Because there's also still a sentiment here where people don't trust the banks here. So they'll have their methods of kind of holding their cash reserves somewhere else. And I think that's where Bitcoin is going to shine, hopefully this year or maybe early next year.
Yeah, so you do see potential for Bitcoin in Vietnam.
I do. I see a huge potential because Vietnam's they say Vietnam has the youngest population of 30s to 40-year-olds, right? So I guess the kind of in between Generation X and millennials, and these kind of people, this group of people, are going to have a lot of inheritance to them. And so these people are a little bit more forward thinking. They're not of the old guard, which I would call kind of more the Eastern thinking, kind of the communist kind of thinking. They're more of like the liberal, and they're more kind of left and kind of, hey, we want to expand the country, we want to have more open doors for the company. I mean, for the country. And I think they're looking at better financial tools too as well, right? So that's the thing is, Vietnam is in need of an upgrade on their financial kind of infrastructure here. And Bitcoin would be that kind of leverage thing where if they could build tools and applications on the side of it, I don't see why not. Where Vietnam could be something like a Singapore, right? It's just a change and a flip of something with a population of, in Ho Chi Minh City is a population of 14 million people. So if you can change the mindset of just 14 million people, it's gonna start spreading like wildfire, right? So people would just say this is more effective, it's more easy for us to use. I think that would be a huge change quite quickly.
Right. Well, that was interesting. Did we miss anything? Is there anything we didn't discuss which you would like to discuss?
No, I think that's about it. I just wanted to kind of chat with you more. Like I've always been an admirer of your work. I've read up on your papers on Bitcoin Magazine.
Thank you.
I was glad to have a chance. That's why I wanted to reach out and meet you, because I've always admired your work and always like reading what you have to write. So I was glad to finally meet you.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. People
Yeah.
can find you on Twitter, Bulldozer. How is that? How am I supposed to pronounce this?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just my last name, and then I just kind of added bulldozer, so it sounds like a bulldozer. So.
I'm adding it to the notes, to the podcast notes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for being on, and take care.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Right.
Cheers.
Great. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye.